One of your favorite episodes was Holistic Health Isn't an Amazon Prime Kind of Fix. This episode was so popular that I just had to reboot it for your listening pleasure. Join me this week as we take a look at why holistic health isn't an Amazon Prime kind of fix. It is a journey, not a sprint. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an Eastern medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering period solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. We are going to tackle a favorite topic of mine, which is that there is nothing about holistic wellness that is fast. That's so discouraging, isn't it? I start by saying that because I think it is one of the ways that I lead off most appointments with new people in my practice. And I thought that it would be a really good topic to dive into and talk about today because we live in a culture that wants to have a pill solution for things, that wants the answer yesterday. And because we have such an instant gratification kind of culture and information is at our fingertips and news moves faster than it's ever moved before, and our whole world has picked up speed, we generally don't have a lot of patience for solutions that take any amount of time whatsoever. And for that reason, we tend to turn towards medications, pills, surgery, things that are supposed to give us a solution in a quicker fashion in order to solve the challenges that we're dealing with. And I think it's really important to realize that the most meaningful change that you can make in your body absolutely has no speedy execution. That is really discouraging for a lot of people, and I understand that. And this is exactly why I thought it would be important to talk about this very thing, because a lot of people that reach out to practitioners like me and others don't go in search of other solutions until they're really desperate. And that's not, like I've said in past episodes, this is not throwing shade, okay, to anyone who is in that situation. Because for a lot of people, we just don't know what we don't know. We don't know that there's other options. We haven't been taught to question that there's other things out there. And it isn't until we get a really scary prognosis from a doctor, they suggest some sort of an intervention that doesn't feel aligned in our body, that we go, well, geez, there has to be another way to do this. And I can say that as a person who has been in that situation. So this is a human nature kind of thing, right? That we have to be super uncomfortable and in some level of crisis in order to create change. So usually by the time people find someone like me, they're really desperate. And it's probably one of the hardest parts about the work that I do, really and truly, is to see the level of suffering and the level of desperation that comes from that suffering in the clients that walk through my door. Because by the time they have found me, maybe they have spent a year in infertility treatments and they're really discouraged and they think they need a donor egg. And then I say something to them like, well, if we change your diet, we can actually affect your egg quality. And maybe you won't have to do that. and they love the idea, but then they're frustrated because they feel like they've lost a lot of time. I see this so often, which is why I decided to do an entire episode on it, because I want you to know that it is a good thing to critically think, and it is a good thing to question. And not every allopathic practitioner is going to be really open and receptive to that kind of questioning. And if they're not giving you the answers that you're looking for, be curious. Think outside the box, because there probably is an answer that is more aligned with how you think and how you move through the world. So, holistic wellness is a buzz term these days. I feel like everybody's talking about holistic wellness or holistic health. I mean, heck, I call myself a holistic women's health practitioner. The people that I train and the work that I do are holistic women's health practitioners, because we're looking at the whole body. But when you look at the whole body, you're looking at mind, body, and spirit, right? So the emotional body, the physical body, and the spiritual body. And that practitioner truly believes that wellness, to be well, comes from creating right relationship in those aspects of self. If we're looking at emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being, does that sound like something that moves very quickly, like snap of a fingers or swallowing a pill? No. This is emotional shadow work, because things that we try to sweep under the rug, or in our culture, all too often, we just try to numb out, whether that's with alcohol, whether that's with medication, the list goes on and on. There are so many things that we do because we have such an escapist culture. I mean, scrolling through Facebook feeds is a way to escape. And we're all guilty of this. I mean, I have a habit sometimes of mind-numbingly scrolling, but I don't do it that often, especially since I've made a conscious choice not to do it. But we all have stuff like this where we kind of escape from reality for a little while. And because this is so common, because our world is moving faster than it's ever moved before, because things are really stressful and we don't get to play as much as we would like to. And, if I had $1 for every time I had somebody that I spoke to in another country who was like, "Oh, you actually have a holiday? You're actually taking vacation?" Because Americans work too hard. We don't take enough time off. It's part of our cultural expectation to work hard, but we don't play as hard as they do in other parts of the world. We don't take enough recharge time. So where do we get some of those breaks? We get it through mindlessly scrolling or wine o'clock. I've seen a lot of sweatshirts that make jokes about mommy's wine o'clock, right? I've got a couple signs in my kitchen that make jokes like that just because I think they're funny. One of them says something about driving me crazy, but I didn't drive myself there, right? So like I find a humor in it, which is why it's in my kitchen. But there's a real problem in our country about numbing ourselves out and not actually feeling what we're feeling. Emotions are one of the cornerstones of the human experience, and they can be so beautiful, and they can feel really gross. And when we have the gross ones, we tend to want to avoid them because we don't like feeling gross. But sometimes dealing with physical problems in the body means you have to address that gross head on and ask yourself those uncomfortable questions like, why am I feeling this way? What can I do about it? And maybe it means getting out of a situation that you never, ever thought that you would get out of, or that you'd want to get out of, or on paper or from the ego brain, it looks perfect, but from your heart and your soul, you're dying inside. I've seen this so much in my practice. And this is why I thought this episode would be so, so important, because we have physical ailments, just like this conversation that I had in episode 44 with Taylor, where we were talking about the emotional side of health, and that your mind is a really important part of the equation of your overall well-being. I'm taking that a step further in this episode and looking at holistic health as a whole, because it's become such a buzzword and it's become such a part of our culture and all of these things that, oh, I want a more holistic approach. I want a more natural approach. Okay, great. Are you ready to do the work? Are you willing to do the work? Do you realize that it's going to be work? So, like I said at the beginning, holistic wellness, and I tell my clients this all the time, is not an Amazon Prime kind of fix. Amazon Prime is about as instant gratification for shipping as it possibly gets, which is why their model is one of the many reasons why their model is so darn successful. When it comes to your wellness, your true overall wellness, you have to affect the root cause of the problem. And sometimes that's not in the body. Sometimes you are working through spiritual stuff. Maybe you were raised in a certain religious background and it does not resonate with your body anymore. And every time you go, why am I here? This doesn't speak to me. This doesn't feel like me. Forcing yourself to be something that you're not, believe something that you don't at the core of your being, means your body is out of alignment. Pretending to be someone or believe something that you're not starts to show up as physical problems in the body. I've had clients in the past who, because of their religious upbringing, could not accept that they had been given some really beautiful spiritual gifts that came to them in dream time, or things that they were able to literally see during their day-to-day. Auras around people, messages from the other side, because they were so plugged into that mystic side of the equation, and yet they were so emotionally conflicted about it because their religious upbringing or their religious background, or how they were choosing to move through the world on the spiritual side of things, said that that was bad, or said they were seeing demons. And they had this really big inner conflict with, there's something wrong with me, when there was nothing wrong with them at all. They had gifts, and gifts that they were being shown how to bring into the world. And the more they fought it, the sicker they got. Digestive issues, sleep issues, all kinds of things, period issues. It was heartbreaking. And this is why I want to highlight that holistic wellness is a long game. This is not a sprint. This is not a, like I said, Amazon Prime kind of fix. That's a sprint, man. This is not a sprint. This is the long game. You are fundamentally affecting the fabric of your body, your frequency, your resonance, how your body shows up in the world and moves through space. You begin to think differently. You begin to feel differently about things. It is whole wellness, whole body, whole soul wellness. So when I talk about holistic health, bringing the body into right relationship, it means that you are happy in your skin. You are comfortable. You don't always have a perfect experience with all of those things. I mean, we're always tested. Situations always bring things up for us. They can be triggering from past events. But when our body is in right relationship, we respond to those things differently because we're coming at it from a whole bodied place. And the more we walk into our truth, the healthier we become. Have you ever seen somebody who is having a difficult time in their relationship and like everybody can kind of see that the relationship is really on the brink of being done? And when the person goes, "Yeah, we've decided we're going to end the relationship," nobody looks surprised. But then that person who had joint pain and was miserable in that relationship and was always kind of a Debbie Downer in large groups and things like that, as they get out of the situation that wasn't aligned with their truth, they start going places and doing things, and they literally look like they're reverse aging. We've all had that person in our circle. You know who I'm talking about. Where once they finally emancipate themselves from this really negative, unhealthy situation, whatever that is, it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be unaddressed past historical stuff, whatever that is, once they take that head on and they really address it, they look like they are reverse aging. They look younger overnight. They have more joy in the way that they communicate with people, the way they move through the world. All of those things completely shift. The person literally becomes healthier. If you think about any of the medical shows on TV and they have somebody to live for, they fight, right? They fight the cancer, they fight the bad prognosis, and the surgery goes well, right? We are interconnected, our emotional state, our spiritual state, and our physical state. I probably am going to intermittently refer to this show because it's my new favorite show right now. But I've been watching New Amsterdam. And if you haven't watched it, highly suggest it. No, I'm not affiliated. This is just me anecdotally talking about a show that I really love and enjoy. I am totally in love with the medical director because he brainstorms and comes up with creative solutions from a person-centric place. And I so desperately wish our Western medical model could embrace the way that Max walks through the world. One of the reasons why I like the show, because it gives me a little bit of hope that we might actually be able to get there. But there was an episode where the cardiac thoracic surgeon was not really keen on letting this Haitian spiritual ritual take place before he brought his patient in for surgery. And every time they went to move the bed, something would happen. Her monitors would go crazy. She had to be kept in one place because she wasn't stable enough to move. And then once he allowed this spiritual practice to take place, they were able to move her into surgery and her surgery went well. This is real, folks. Yes, I'm using a TV show as an illustration, but when we feel like we have something to live for, we have something to fight for, that's our emotional body making our physical body get in alignment. Our emotional body goes, I have something to stay here for. I have something to live for. I have to be here. And it helps the physical body to fight harder. There is a connection. And because there's a connection, I could talk about these connections all day long. I thought using that Netflix example might be one that would help ground it in a current everyday context that people would be able to resonate with. But holistic wellness is about digging into your shit. It's about taking some of your demons on head on. And it's going to feel gross and you're not going to love it, but you're going to come out the other side healthier and you're going to come out the other side stronger. It's one of the reasons that I love using pelvic steaming in my practice for anyone who is open to it, because there is emotional release that happens there. It is such a great practice to use with people who have any sort of pelvic trauma, birth trauma, sexual trauma, anyone who is having an issue with identity and being able to generate zest for life. We're literally working with all the energy in that area of your body. And just like we talked about with Kim Coffin in episode 41, where we were talking about sacred sexuality and that turn on, giving you the energy and zest to take on your life. It's the same thing. We are awakening and moving energy through this part of the body, which helps you to address whatever needs to be addressed, physical, emotional, or spiritual. That's one of the reasons I love pelvic steaming so much, or yoni steaming, whatever you would like to call it. And I do it a lot with people in my practice. Any body can steam. And there's very powerful benefits for any body because of where you're steaming and how you're moving energy in the body. Holistic wellness means figuring out spiritually where you're at, what feels in alignment for you. I joke around that I'm a recovering Catholic, which I'm sure my godmother would not be really excited if she heard this episode and heard me refer to it that way. I was raised in a French Catholic family, and there are certain aspects of the rhythm of growing up Catholic, that the ritualistic aspect of it that I love and in some ways miss, I guess, but it didn't align with my body. I was the kid that used to ask my mother where all the women were. Catholicism did not ring any bells for me because I could not figure out why there were no women in the Catholic Church at all. Like, no figureheads. Like, Jesus's mom was pretty much the only woman that entered the conversation. And I just could not figure that out. I couldn't figure out why I had to tell a priest that I had been a bad person if God already saw that I screwed up. Like, I just couldn't get behind it. And I'm not shaming anyone who can. And if that resonates for you and that feels good in the fabric of your being, then that's how you spiritually practice your faith. For me, it didn't resonate with me. I mean, there isn't really even a label for the way that I go through the world at this point. I am a very spiritual person, but I don't subscribe to labels to describe my spirituality. I feel very connected to nature and the change of the seasons. I feel very connected to the fact that there is a duality that brings life into the world, whether that's outside, and you see that with plants and flowers, right? They have some female parts and male parts. And again, I'm not trying to make everything a binary, but as an Eastern medicine practitioner, I can't help but see the yin and yang of everything. The masculine and feminine energy doesn't mean that has to be their identity. It's the energy. Plants have masculine and feminine parts. Animal pairs have masculine and feminine parts. There's a duality. So for me, being in a dude-centered religion didn't make any sense to me because everything else when I looked out the window had a binary. And our bodies have like 2 arms and 2 legs under ordinary circumstances, right? So we have this biphasic experience in our menstrual cycles. We have the first half, the follicular phase, and we have the second half, the luteal phase. So for me, that dualism made more sense to me personally. And so I believe in that heaven and earth come together to create humanity. And you can call it whatever you want. You see it in Taoist culture, you see it in Buddhist culture, you see it in a whole bunch of religions around the world. That understanding that there are lots of forces at play. And so I don't want this to go into a completely theological kind of conversation because, world religion, everybody, you're entitled to believe what you believe. But that is why I look at this and I say, there is a spiritual alignment that happens here. And when you are operating from a place of being aligned with your truth, what you believe in for a bigger being out there, whether that's spirit, the universe, Allah, God, whatever you want to call this person or people, if you're in a multi-deity kind of religious background, whatever it is that you believe has to feel aligned with your truth. Just like for me, I had to see the presence of women. The lack of women did not make any sense or feel aligned to me at all. I'm a deeply spiritual person. And now I'm in this space where I understand why it didn't resonate with me. But I'm also a lot healthier. I have endometriosis, and I really am very asymptomatic as somebody who has celiac disease and endometriosis. But I have come into right relationship with my truth. So holistic wellness is not something that you can take a pill for. It's not something that you can have surgery for or go to a couple of Reiki sessions and you've come into right relationship with yourself. Holistic wellness means that you have to attend to all of the dust kitties underneath the bed. Dust bunnies, dust kitties, whatever you want to call them. You have to deal with the skeletons in the closet. You have to deal with the emotional and physical aspects of your life that are affecting the physical expression of your life in order to bring your whole body into right relationship. And when that happens and we nourish the roots of the plant, I love the idea that Eastern medicine practitioners are gardeners and they help provide the plant with what it is it needs to thrive. I love this idea. It's one of the reasons that I practice from an Eastern medicine perspective is we bring our body into right relationship and the plant thrives. That is truly the definition of holistic wellness, is the whole body. You are not ingredients in a cookie like you are in the allopathic model. You've got one person that you go to for your ears, nose, and throat. You got one person you go to for your gut. You got one person you go to for your vagina. Like, they pull you apart and it's all siloed. And 9 times out of 10, your paperwork doesn't make it from one office to the other, which is a gigantic pain in the ass. Because it's not one person that's looking at your whole body, let alone the emotional side of it. You have to go to another doctor for the emotional side of it, right? And when you're looking at holistic wellness, sometimes clients come into my office and all we talk about is what's going on in their life. Sometimes it's just a giant bitch session where they sit there and they have somebody who cares about them and is invested in them that sits and just listens and holds that space for them. And they get all done venting all of the things that they're frustrated with in their life. And they go, man, I feel a lot better. Thank you for listening to me, because nobody will listen to me, or I don't have anyone to share this with. And I always suggest, like, hey, it might not be a bad idea for you to pull a professional into your experience and into your care team, because here's the thing. We're looking at whole wellness. Whole wellness. So yes, maybe this person needs a therapist, or maybe they just need somebody who cares that's going to let them vent. And because they're an external processor, they figure their stuff out as they're talking it out. I have a lot of clients that solve the problems of the world just venting to me for 20 minutes out of their 30 for their appointment. And then they go, oh, I feel a lot better. We should probably talk about my period now, right? Sometimes we only talk about the body because there's a lot of stuff going on there. Sometimes we talk about life transitions. Like, all of these things are all part of getting the menstrual cycle to work well and supporting how it shows up for you. Because you should be experiencing 4 to 6 days of fresh red blood only. Your period should be arriving every 28 to 30 days. This is all people who are not on birth control. Okay. This is unmedicated. You should be experiencing a 7-day fertile window. Your period should not have symptoms beforehand. It should just gently arrive. It gets a little heavier. It gets lighter again, and it stops, and it stays red the whole time. No clots, no cramps, no emotional roller coaster, no bullshit. It should be a gentle experience. And most of us, it's not. And a lot of times where we see those frustrations that maybe we haven't dealt with emotionally, they show up in that PMS phase or the PMDD phase of people's cycles. And the irritation level goes through the roof because this is something that needs to be addressed in some way. So life informs the way the body shows up. And if you're truly working with a holistic wellness professional that is invested in the entire process, they're going to hold some space for you. They're going to give you resources to be able to address things that are outside of their toolkit. And they're going to give you tools within their toolkit so that you can thrive. I have a whole group of very talented, amazing practitioners in my network, so that when I have that person that comes in that goes, oh, I'm really struggling with being able to be intimate with my partner, like it physically hurts when I try to let them in, I'll suggest they go to a pelvic PT. But if it sounds like there's more of a relationship challenge there, I might suggest talk therapy, or I might suggest a pelvic floor physical therapist who has a little bit more of an energetic spin on their work, because your body is physically responding and shutting them out. Your body's physically not letting them in for some reason. Where is it that there's the disconnect, that you don't feel safe enough to let them in? That safe could be physical or emotional. So whatever it is where you're not being held in your life, it will show up in your body. If you're overstressed, your libido will pretty much be dead. If you don't feel like you're being seen and heard, those kinds of things come roaring to the surface during PMS. Those are the fire-breathing dragon days, man, where you just want to burn down the entire village because your threshold and patience level goes seriously out the window because of what's going on hormonally, but it's because this has been simmering under the surface. So bam, there it is. So holistic wellness is a journey. Yes, there are physical things that we do to address that journey. I'll give people herbs to help nourish the roots of the plant. I'll give them steaming practices. I might give them breath work to do. I'll use things like acutonics, which is acupuncture with sound, to help chi and blood and other fluids move smoothly through the body, because when we're in that constricted space, things don't flow really well. But then I'll also invite them to consider other ways that they can help nourish their plant. And so it's a journey. Yes, from a physical standpoint, you have a brand new uterus every 90 days because your cells are always dividing and dying and new cells are replacing it. But if you're holding the same pattern, like a fibroid or a polyp or something like that, it's because there's nothing interrupting that cycle. So let's interrupt and allow the body enough energy and resources and take the disharmony out of the way so that the brilliant body that we live in can come back into right relationship with itself. And those patterns can go away when people do that kind of work. It's not overnight. It takes cycles. And it takes being willing to be open and do the work. And it breaks my heart when people come in and they, even though I set the tone that this is a journey, they're not patient enough with the process because, like I said, the people, by the time they find me, they're desperate. They're desperate for an answer. They're desperate to be out of the situation that they're in. They are frustrated. They just cannot deal with the symptoms that they're dealing with anymore, whether that is period problems, whether that's fertility challenges, whatever it is. People don't want to push pause on whatever it is that they're doing. They just need a fix or a solution for whatever is going on. And I can give them the solution, but they have to be willing to put in the work. And that can be the hardest part to manage as a holistic practitioner, is you have to be really good at being able to hold space for their frustration, because they will get frustrated that it's not fast. They will get frustrated that their progress is happening, but it's happening incrementally, which feels very slow in a culture where everything is instant gratification. But the best results that I have gotten from any of my clients are the people who are willing to be patient. Yes, they air their frustration with me. And yes, they might even have moments where they're like, Adrienne, is this even fucking working? And I'll be like, yes. And I try to point out the places where we've seen change. And they hang in there with me. When they hang in there with me, I get phone calls like I did back in April from a woman who never knew when her cycle was ending because she was bleeding all the time. And she calls me and she goes, I didn't know if I was going to get here. And I sure as heck have been frustrated, but I just had my first 28-day cycle, Adrienne, and I didn't have any bleeding in between. And I'm so excited. I just needed to share it with you. That is possible, but it means being willing to do the work and hang in there. So when you talk about, I want a natural solution, I want a holistic solution, I invite you to consider the fact that it is a journey and a process to get there. But when you get there, your body will be healthier, your body will be stronger, your heart will be healthier and happier. When you get there, it will be better than you could have ever imagined because you will have done all the work on the way there. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist, Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.